We have been exploring in this, on Sunday mornings, Gordon has been preaching a series on the Ten Commandments. We're going to get to that here in just a second. In fact, we'll go to, if you want to go and mark Exodus chapter 20, that's where we're going to head in a few minutes. I want to mention this to you first. I had the privilege last week of I was gone out of the country for about a week. I have a long-standing relationship with, in Honduras, usually Tegucigalpa, the capital city. But there is a group, our church is pretty connected to Christian Works, and I do some counseling with them. The Riverside Church of Christ in Coppell had contacted and said, we would like to see about the possibility of having a couple of counselors to go with us to our mission opportunity in Honduras. And the executive director, Rob Pine, had called a couple of us, 2 or 3 of us, and we said, certainly, if I don't have a commitment that week, then we'd love to do that. Well, it all worked out. Last week was gone, and flew out a week ago Thursday, was going to be back here this Thursday, but it's interesting what airports do. They have this agreement that if you're not there at the gate when it's time to go, they'll go without you. And I found that out Thursday, even in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, and they kind of handle things a little differently. You know, it's kind of, in fact, I was there, I got there like I was in the airport, was visiting with one of the mission groups, youth groups, and one of the moms and some of the kids, and the youth minister, his wife, and we were kind of visiting downstairs. I go upstairs, do all the stuff, go up the escalator, go through customs, go through, getting checked out and all that business, and write all your stuff that you're not bringing into the country or out of the country. Walked through, sat down, came over there to the gate, and I said, ma'am, I need to go board. She said, we called your name once, it's shut. I said, no, ma'am, you don't understand. I need to get on the plane. She said, no, you don't understand. The gates, the door's shut. No, ma'am, you don't understand. I need to get out here and back. So I was the one that ultimately did not understand. So I did understand. Downstairs to try. Thankfully, got out on Friday, so I flew in Friday night. That particular airline, I love Southwest, by the way. I want to tell you, it was not Southwest. The particular airline that I used, which I will not name, decided that my bags need to go somewhere else. And so Friday night was kind of trying to figure that out. And so anyway, we will, if that's your worst problem, I think we're probably in good shape. But we had a program, our outreach in the city, we had this celebration of hope over here in Hamilton Park yesterday. And while over there doing some painting and scraping and all that business, was on the phone with this particular airline. And so they delivered it to my house. So that was all good. In the context of all that travel, one of the things that I love about doing travel like that, especially with groups, is, you hurry up and wait, you go to the hotels, you go to hotels and restaurants and airports and sometimes on curbs or whatever. You have these conversations. Now, often they're very engaging. It's about serious things, and you talk about the mission that you're on, and we were involved in this remote area in northeast Honduras, working with some very severely molested and abused kids in some orphanages in a school, and it was rampant. The men and granddads and all that are continually oppressing the girls. So we've spent a lot of time with students in a school and also with some orphanages, and then with the missionaries and some of their relationships. But in all that, there's a lot of downtime at night in Puerto Limpiota, Honduras. And so conversations begin. Lots of conversations. Some of them take on, again, serious tone. Some of them not so much. One of those not long ago that developed is one I want to share with you. I'm interested in your take on this. It was favorite TV families. What would be your favorite TV family? It's interesting to me because when I hear someone tell their favorite TV family or whatever, it tells me quite a bit about them. And so I'm interested and intrigued. And one of the great blessings that I have here is being pretty involved with, on a kind of one-to-one basis with a variety of age groups. And so when I'm in a particular age group discussion, sometimes the responses are a little different. I want to read a few of these to you, see what your take would be. If we were sitting at dinner or on the plane with a lot of time, and usually it's in these small groups and you kind of get to know each other, but some of the families TV families throughout the years that people enjoyed most. The first one, got to tell you, I know the show, didn't know the name of the family. The show was Father Knows Best. Anyone know the name of the family, Father Knows Best? Now you're going to tell on yourself probably some of the age So you may want to not. The Andersons. I never knew that the Andersons was the name of the family in Father Knows Best. And that was, so I knew it was the guy, Robert Young did Marcus Welby. That's how I knew who that person was. So that's about where I'm going to break and not feel young anymore. Anyone here go have a weekly visit to Walton's Mountain? The Waltons was a favorite. What's their most notable phrase? Good night, John Boy. That's right. Okay. I don't know that I would ever want to be called this, but who would be considered probably the most lovable bigot ever on TV? There you go, Archie Bunker. I would never want to have that as a description of me. The Jeffersons was another one. The Connor family. Recognize that one? Roseanne and Roseanne Barr, the Connor family. So they were, and I had heard that people say one of the reasons they liked that show is because it resonated with a lot of people in American culture. You can determine what you want to with that one. The Douglases, My Three Sons, was another one. Now we're going back a ways, but the Douglases, and it was a widower with three sons, and kind of an ornery, lovable older man who was their housekeeper, butler. The Cleavers. Who can forget Beaver? Leave It to Beaver and the Cleavers. Or the Sanfords, Fred and Lamont, always a favorite. The Brady Bunch was one that continues to come up. And do we know the Ingalls? Where do the Ingalls hang out? Little House on the Prairie, that's right. Okay. Possibly my favorite was the Cosbys. In the 80s, that was going strong. I was in Abilene in grad school, and Dr. Tom Milholland was in class. It was a marriage family therapy class, and he was saying, yep, great show, love it. It was real popular, and probably one of the most unrealistic families I've ever seen in my life. Because people were feeling guilty because they couldn't. I mean, who's got a dad that's always going to have the kind of comeback that, Huxtable, first name? Cliff, thank you very much. Okay, I call him Bill Cosby. But anyway, it always has something great to say. So that was a fun show to watch. But as Milholland said, and I tend to think that he's right, who would want to have that as the yardstick to be measured by? I didn't realize this. The family that is the longest running TV show, say it this way, the longest running scripted TV show in history. Longest running American scripted primetime TV series. Time magazine, December 31, 1999, issued this family, or in this show, it was named the 20th century's best television series. Any guesses? That's right. That's right. The Simpsons. Imagine. Who doesn't love? I mean, someone is. That's good. That's good. I won't even get into the Bundys on Married with Children. I mean, they need a full-time therapist for a variety of reasons, as would the Sopranos for different reasons. And all names that came up. The Duggars. Anyone know the Duggars? Does that resonate? They have been in the media for a while, and then they had their show called 17 Kids and Counting, and then they changed it to 18 Kids and Counting. Now it's 19 Kids and Counting. They're running for the border. We don't know how many they're going to end up with, but that was one that continues to go now. The Bravermans. It's current. Parenthood, there you go. Okay, and I would be shot in a Church of Christ if I didn't mention our lovable friends in Louisiana with the beards. There you go. That's right. That's right. The Robertson family. The Pritchetts, on the show Modern Family, taking on a new, a different dimension, a lot of different dimensions. It's kind of a mockumentary, if you will. It's a show that tells a story about a variety of different subsets of constructs of family. And what's interesting to me in hearing all that is that is the reason people like the shows. And what goes on with that. And I guess I still have to say my number one, my favorite is the Cosbys, because I've always been a fan of Bill Cosby and his comedy. His stand-up, or probably more likely his sit-down comedy. And he sits, I was in Reed Arena at College Station, and he sat in a chair in the middle of Reed Arena for 2 hours, just talking, and had the audience in his hand. Years ago, he made a statement in some of his skits, some of his stand-up, that seems to have more legs and more quote and more life than any other I've heard him say. It was about his dad. And he says, I had a relationship with my dad. My dad established a relationship with me when I was 7 years old, and he's maintained it since. And it goes like this. I brought you into this world, and I can take you out. It don't matter none at all to me which one of those I do, because I can make another one just like you. And I think the implied message is, happy to do so. Cosby is a favorite, and one of the things I thought about in the scripture we're going to go to, Exodus chapter 20, verse 12, I think about that phrase. And I used to wonder, is it possible that that is the meaning stated in this fifth of the Ten Commandments? When the writer says, as he does, and the documentation suggests this. Let's read it, if you would, together with me. Exodus chapter 20, verse 12. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land that the Lord God is giving you. The implicit message is, if you don't honor your father and mother, I brought you into this world, I can take you out. That was my translation. By the way, my dad was a big fan of that phrase as well, and let us know periodically that could happen in the Cohorn home. I think that this is what I would suggest to you as a gateway of the Ten Commandments. This is, the first four are often called the first table commandments, and the second six are called the second table commandments. The first four are our relationship vertically with God. The second six are our relationships with one another. I would suggest to you that this one is pivotal. It's a key to all the rest. I want to ask you, if you would, to go and read with me before we go into to get a sense of what I think is intended with this, with Exodus chapter 20, verse 12, the real meaning there. First, we want to set it up and go to Exodus chapter 19. So if you'll go with me, please, to 19, verse 1 through 6. Read along with me. On the first day of the third month, after the Israelites left Egypt, on that very day, they came to the desert of Sinai. After they set out from Rephidim, they entered the desert of Sinai, and Israel camped there in the desert, in front of the mountain. Then Moses went up to God by himself. Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the descendants of Jacob. This is what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself." Verse 5, "Now if you obey me fully, and if you keep my covenant, then out of all the nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words, Moses, that I want you to speak to the Israelites." Okay, Gary, what's so big about that, other than it's Scripture? This is not an uncommon statement for God to make to his people, and certainly to Moses. He was telling them over and over, this is what I want, this is what I expect, this is what I demand, this is what I command. This is what I want you to tell the people. And they must get this message. And before we go forward, I want to ask you if you would also take one step further back. Look at Exodus chapter 17, if you would. I want to read the first 7 verses there, because I think the Bible is the best commentary on itself. And the Bible says this in 17:1, "The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin, traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So they quarreled with Moses and said, 'Give us water. Give us water to drink.' Moses replied, 'Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test?' But the people were thirsty. They were thirsty for water, and they grumbled against Moses, and they continued the grumbling. So they said, 'Why did you bring us out of Egypt to make us and our children and our livestock, all of us, lead us to die of thirst?' Moses cried out to the Lord, 'What am I to do with these people? They're almost ready to stone me.' And the Lord said to Moses, 'Go out in front of the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take with you in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile. And go. I will stand there before you by the rock of Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink. So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" Okay, Gary, that's all nice, that's fine. But what's the deal? I think here's the deal. In Exodus chapter 20, verse 1, the Lord said, "I'm God. I brought you out of Egypt. I brought you out of slavery." And then he said this. "You shall have no other gods before me." Number one. "You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. I'm punishing the children for their sin and the parents to the third and fourth generation of all those who hate me, but showing love to a thousand generations and to those who love me and keep my commandments." So number 2 was, don't make any images to worship. Number 3, don't misuse my name. "You shall not misuse the name of the Lord God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless for misusing his name." Number 4, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all the work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day to the Lord your God. Who is that? Well, that's me. "On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For the 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and the sea and all that's in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore, do what he did. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy." These were dedicated to the vertical relationship to the Father. So on this fifth commandment was a pivotal one, in my opinion, because he was telling Moses to tell the people, honor the messengers. Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. What do you mean honor your messengers, Gary? Well, here's what I think is happening. This message and statement to Moses is saying, what I said previous to now, what I've demonstrated before now, is important. They must get that message. You have to get that message. It's a matter of survival. Things will go well for you in this land that I've prepared for you if you will get this message. It's not going to go well for you if you don't get this message. Message to who? Message to everyone, but specifically this one, message to the fathers, message to the mothers. Why them? Because they are the ones commissioned to give this message to the next person, the next generation. It isn't a message to the priest. It's not a message to the tribal leader. It's not a message to anyone. It's a message to the father and a message to the mother to give this message of honoring God for who he is, what he will provide, how often he'll provide, and he is faithful. And there's nobody that's going to have a more powerful statement with word and with action than the mother and the father of these children who follow. And by the way, this was not a message to children. This was a message to adults. Now, the message is still for children, but this was a message to people that were listening, to everyone to know that no matter how long, no matter where you are, your father, your mother are to be honored. Why? Because of the person they are. I believe also there's an implicit message too, is to help them understand that eventually Jesus honors his Father in a way that's very similar to this. But in the meantime, for now, as they're getting ready to take this land that the Lord's going to give to them, he's saying, get them to get this message, if nothing else. If you don't get anything else, they need to get this message. And nobody is going to be more potent of a messenger. No one's going to have a message in more concentrated form than the father and then the mother for those that are following behind. Does that make sense? And so following that then, the message about not killing, the message no murder, no stealing, all those others, they're going to follow. But these are core statements and messages that the messengers, the father and the mother, must give to those that are dependent upon them. I was in a good family, love them. My parents, great people. My mother was the primary messenger. She was the only messenger, really, of Christian message and activity. She went to church. My dad did not. My brother and my sister went with my mother. My dad was a very kind, good, loving man, but he would support my mother's faith. And he had a faith, but it was not one that involved church for a long time. So the three of us were elementary school. So we would go off to church with my mother. There was a deacon down the street about 3 houses down, and he was very intentional about Bible study with whoever. And so Dad agreed on occasion to meet with him, and they had some Bible study together. And on the occasions that Dad would go to church, the preacher was pretty convicting, pretty powerful. His messages were strong. And there were a few times when he noticed that my dad would come to church some and matched the two, saw who his wife was, and put him with her. And he pulled him aside a second, the preacher did, and said, "Can I talk to you?" "Sure." "You know, I've got a lot of respect for you. What I see in you, you seem to really love your wife, love your kids, nice man, easy to talk to. But your kids are missing something, your family's missing something. And quite frankly, you're not coming through for them." That's the kind of message that a man wants to hear. And so, but Dad was impressed with the preacher and his message and who he was. Your sons and your daughter, and certainly your wife, need to have a man who is engaged in showing and living with words and with actions. Christ-likeness, faithfulness, faith. The message that God's given to Moses to be given to the father and the mother and the others. Well, that was very piercing for Dad. He thought about it. A while later, he was baptized. He began to be more involved with the church. Since 80-something, 86 or 88, he's been serving now as the elder at that church. But if it wasn't for the message that stated, your kids and your wife, your kids' future is on the line. And they need both those parents, if both parents are in the picture, both parents to stand up for them. A few years later, I was working with Oklahoma Publishing Company, driving trucks while I was in college, driving trucks for the state paper locally in Oklahoma City, driving around delivering to the regional managers, and they would take them to the other people to get them to the homes. And there was a guy on the dock, the assistant foreman, funny guy, funny guy, life of the party, very engaging, a lot of jokes, most of them vulgar. And I was quietly, while I'm a Christian guy in college studying ministry, laughing to myself, and because I didn't want to get found out. But something in me, one night I went home, I told my dad, "Thank you for growing up." Because although he was fun and funny, funnier than my dad, he was 42 years old and hadn't grown up. And we needed that person, that father and that mother, to have that message in word and action, to live it out. Daily, nightly, all the time. So what do you do, though, if you don't have that person? What happens if you don't have someone in your life? Well, it is a challenge. It is difficult. I want to ask you, before we answer that question, I want to ask you if you would hear the message. Read with me, if you would. Go to Deuteronomy to hear one more and another time the significant, repetitive message listed in the Pentateuch here, in this fifth chapter, the fifth book of the Pentateuch, what's described for God's people. Deuteronomy chapter 5:33 says this: Walk in obedience to all that the Lord your God has commanded you, so that you may live and prosper and prolong your days in the land that you will possess. Deuteronomy 6, 1 and 2. These are the commands, the decrees, the laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you, to observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess, so that you and your children and your children and their children after them may fear the Lord, and may fear the Lord their God, as long as you live, by keeping all his decrees and commands that I give you, so that you may enjoy long life. This message is over and over. One that we're pretty familiar with, and we quote a lot, Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 8. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children, no matter the age. Talk about them when you sit at home, and when you walk along the road, and when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands. Bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. Deuteronomy 11, 8 through 8 and 9. Observe, therefore, all the commands that I am giving you today, so that you may have the strength to go in and to take over the land that you are crossing over to Jordan to possess, and so that you may live long in the land that the Lord your God swore to your forefathers to give to them and their descendants, a land flowing with milk and honey. It seems to be ongoing, repetitive, regular statement, non-negotiable statement from the Father. Once he's established the relationship that he has with, the vertical relationship that he has with his people, then he says, I want you, fathers, I want you, mothers, I want you, parent types, we'll get to that in a second, to hear this. They must get this message. It's survival. You parents that are sending your kids off to college, survival. They have it or they don't. We've got people here that have just done phenomenal jobs. I mean, I don't live in your homes, but what we see, and none of us do, but in each other's homes, but when we see how you invest in your kids, that is the job. If they get other things done, cool. If the grade's up, that's great. If they get a good job, that's cool. But this is the one. He says, I command you to give them that message. And then in turn, they honor you. Well, Gary, didn't it say that you honor your parents? Yes. But most of what you said so far is about what the parents' responsibility is to the kids. Yes. I believe that was the intention. And then in the process, when you have, the message was to honor the person and honor the messenger. But this, I think it's incumbent, I think it's embedded and implicit in the statement that all of this, there was an assumption, all of this would be taking place. Parents must give them that message. Jim Burrow called last night, and again, I've been out of the country, but Jim shared that Janice's mother passed away Friday afternoon, 5 o'clock. It's been a great blessing to get to know the Burrows and work with Jim and some things, SGSO and some other stuff. He's teaching our B1 class right now. But it's most important and significant to watch them and watch their marriage, watch their relationship, and watch, as he described, how they had their final hours with Janice's mother. It is honoring. It's honoring a life that has been dedicated to sharing this story, this message with those behind, to pass on to the next generation and the next. And so Tuesday morning, they'll celebrate Janice's mother's physical life as she goes home beyond. What an awesome thing. So what do you do, though, with those that don't have them? Those that don't have someone in your life? A parent that maybe abused you. A parent that may be neglecting. Well, most of that's another conversation for another time, but let me suggest to you this. We are in an age now, it ain't Father knows best, and it's not leave it to Beaver. So what do? There are plenty of people, parent types, aunt and uncle types, people that I believe the Lord leads into your life, if your eyes are open to it, to stand in the gap for the people, for the kids, for those ahead, no matter the age, to give them a sense and a glimpse of Jesus, a sense and a glimpse of God when that person is no longer there. Is Janie McGinty at school when she sees kids that need that kind of touch of Jesus, and so she does that because they're missing that. It's Morgan, the 24-year-old young lady that I met last week in Puerto Lempiras, Honduras. We flew in on this dirt and grass runway into this remote place, pulled out. She had 2 kids on either hip. She probably is 95 pounds soaking wet. Morgan, 24 years old. But 3 years ago, when she was on a college trip, she came out to this place, and she was to Puerto Lempiras, this remote village, and she was leaving. The group had done what they were going to do, and she left. She was leaving, getting back on this plane, this small 20-person plane, and there's a lady that came across this grass, dirt runway, and she said, in Spanish, wave her down, wave her down. Come here, come here. It was a grandmother of a little girl. Oh, I'm sorry, a little boy. And she said, I need you to take my boy. Had a translator. I need you to take my boy. I can't do that. No, I need you to take my boy. I can't. You can offer him a much better life than I can, all through translation. She said, I can't do that. I'm in college. And she was telling the translator, and they were calling for the group to get on the plane. So 4 rounds of that, she gets on the plane very upset. She thinks about that. She can't forget that little boy. She can't forget that grandmother's face. She goes back in the States, flies into Alabama. She's going back to school, but she's having this internal conversation that she finally shares with her parents and says, I've got to move to Honduras. And she told them the story, and the parents said, you can't. She said, I can't not. You can't. I have to. If you do, this is over a period of time, at least you need to finish college. And they made the agreement. 3 years later, she's out in Puerto Lempiras, Honduras, with 3 kids. 2 she's adopted, the third one they're working through, and she is setting up an orphanage, setting up a community garden, watering it out there, and she feeds 60 kids 3 days a week with support from an organization to help with food for each sponsoring kid, but she's there. She is carrying these kids around in this remote place doing what he said do. Because there is no daddy in the picture. And the grandmother says, I can't, I have no money. And Morgan says, I can. Thursday night I sat in the Baxter Institute at a table. Amber Foster, an Oklahoma Christian student, went to Honduras years ago, similar deal, finished up. She's now 10 years into a ministry called Breaking Chains. Same thing. There are people, there are you and me, making decisions about where we are, who we are, what we'll do. Will we stand in the gap? Will we honor our parents no matter the age? Even if they're not necessarily deserving, in our opinion, of honor. You can minimally honor the place. If you don't necessarily agree with the president, whoever that president is, in any period of time, you can at least honor the office. Well, in this case, maybe you can honor the person and remove yourself from the damage that person is doing, but you can still honor as much as you can do to not compromise yourself. James Dobson, finish on this. Dobson, years ago, focused on the family. Had his radio show in California at the time before he moved to Colorado. Pete Maravich was an NBA basketball player, before that Louisiana State basketball player. Great guy, a lot of fancy, just kind of a crazy and colorful guy in terms of his on-the-court play. But he's now considered one of the top 50. He was voted one of the top 50 NBA basketball players of all time. He lived a very racy life, and at one point he finished up his career, and he became, a few years later, a Christian. He committed himself to Jesus Christ, became a Christian, and he was invited to be on the radio show with Dobson. Dobson was talking with him. They had a good interchange, finished the show, and as Dobson did quite often, he will play basketball, loves basketball, play basketball, pickup game with 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 5-on-5, whatever. Well, in this case, they had a 3-on-3 basketball game, and Maravich was one. 40 years old. Maravich is out there playing. They play for a while. They get a little break, a little water break. Dobson goes over there talking to Maravich, Pete Maravich, and says, "You seem to really be enjoying yourself." "I am. It never felt better." Took a drink of the water, turned around. Dobson heard a thud. He turned around, caught Pete Maravich as Maravich breathed his last breath at 40 years old. It affected Dobson so much, he went home to his son Ryan, and he said, "Buddy, I want to talk to you a second. I don't know if you've heard yet, it's on the news, but after the show today, Mr. Maravich, the basketball player, buddy, he died. And he died playing basketball with me. In fact, I caught him in my arms as he breathed his last breath." Mr. Maravich has 2 boys, and he didn't have the opportunity to say to his boys what he'd like to have said as a final statement. Well, I want to take that opportunity with you. I have had a lot of achievements in my life, and I've been proud of them, and I've been pretty driven, really driven. But that affected me a lot today, and here's what I want you to hear. Those trophies, I've got trophies that I've found in the attic or dusted off and forgotten. Those don't matter. I love you, and I'm thankful for your grades. I'm thankful for your relationships, your friendships. I'm thankful for all that you've done. I'm thankful for the boy that you are, 17 years old. But here's the thing. All that stuff doesn't matter. This is what I want you to hear. One day, I'm going to experience the same thing that Mr. Maravich experienced today. I'm going to die. When I die, I'm going to go to the other side. I'm going to heaven. This is my one thing I want to request of you. I'm going to be looking for you. I'm going to be watching for you. I don't know how that's going to look, but I know this. I'm going to be watching for you. My one request, son, be there. Be there. If you do great in high school, cool. College, cool. I've got faith that you will. That stuff ultimately doesn't matter. I will be looking for you, watching for you. Be there. Yahweh said, "I'm God. Don't worship any others. Don't create them. Honor the Sabbath and give this message and live it out, words and actions. Do whatever you need to do to be there." Come as we stand and sing. High school, cool. College, cool. I've got faith that you will. That stuff ultimately doesn't matter. I will be looking for you, watching for you. Be there. Yahweh said, "I'm God. Don't worship any others. Don't create them. Honor the Sabbath and give this message and live it out, words and actions. Do whatever you need to do to be there." Come as we stand and sing.